go to. And I suppose in terms of also looking at how we can use some of these data to build indicators, the CEH is doing a lot of work on it because an ex-intern of ours is now doing her PhD there. She used to work with my colleague on the Living Planet Index, and I think is now currently working on kind of creating something similar but from occurrence data rather than population trend data. And that's actually something that we also will be starting to look into because, that's going to be a very convoluted, boring story. To make it really short, I weirdly become part of the butterfly specialist group.
Okay.
Not being a butterfly expert at all. Remember my rule of it's got to be that big at least. I'm completely aborted on that one now. It's like, yeah, no, it's fine. Backtrack. And I'm currently the Red List Authority focal point for the Butterfly Specialist Group. And as part of this and working with my colleague on the Living Planet Index, we really would love to have the Living Planet Index include the first invertebrate group. And we figured butterflies is a very good starting point because practically, and you can again quote me on this, they're practically birds. Very much in the way that they're kind of monitored and stuff. People love them, right? I mean, they're like the glamour invertebrates, right?
You can see them.
They're pretty. A lot of people who go out birding are also into butterflies. I mean, they're very much really like birds. So we kind of figured that we might actually be able to have good population time series data for butterflies because people, particularly in Europe, there's already good monitoring programs. Expanding this worldwide is a bit more of an issue, although we've come across quite a few good data sources, so we're currently trying to build this, but I think ultimately what we need to do is try and build indicators from occurrence records or figure out how we can do this better. So using similar stuff to what CEH and our ex-intern, now PhD student, are currently doing. Because that's the data that you have for invertebrates more than population data. You have those for birds and mammals, fish stocks, yes, these kind of things. Everything else, much less. So I think that's another conceptual thing, but that's more relating at first maybe more to kind of population trend indicators. But obviously also from there then you can quantify declines, which again help you apply the IUCN categories and criteria, so it could also become a very valuable tool for doing red list assessments. And I think actually the guys at Kew, together with people at WCMC, the World Conservation Monitoring Center, have recently done some work. There was a paper on essentially, I think, relating to how you can use occurrence data to do red list assessments for plants. I assume it will have not really looked at declines, but that would just be like the next logical step, is that you can probably also kind of see what the occurrence data over time is and whether there's any way with Bayesian modeling that we can kind of come up with some cool ways to use that, because for many species that's all we have. So I think that's also quite interesting, as is machine learning. Now you literally open the floodgate. Machine learning and what's it called? Deep learning techniques, models will probably be something that we can use to start becoming more predictive with extinction risk assessments. Again, doing assessments quicker rather than just having better sample size. The other issue is to be able to produce these assessments more quickly, so we can act and kind of say something about the state of biodiversity more quickly. The current process with the IUCN, I suppose, is very much still reliant on workshops and expert input, and that's all fine because you need to validate these things. But then the review process, all of these things takes a very long time.
So what's the current time frame?
If you're really lucky, I suppose, then from starting a project through to the workshop review and publication, it might be a year. And that's, I think, if you're quite lucky. If you can do that within a year, you really have succeeded. So it's quite a long time frame. And so another project that we're currently working on, we've just put a project proposal in is with some of our collaborators in Australia. They want to lead on a project to complete the global reptile assessment. It's obviously Australia, land of reptiles, right? What they want to do is run assessment workshops like they have been done, so you don't want to suddenly change the methodology of the global reptile assessment. That would also be bad. And the IUCN is involved in this as well. But what they also want to do is run in conjunction to this modeling approaches that we can then also kind of verify and validate at the workshops. Ask experts if that would have been in any shape or form helpful, if they've known that, for example, or if it kind of fits together with what they've come up with, these kind of things. And so hopefully we're going to get some funding to do this, and that will be with some people in Australia, in Melbourne, and also some collaborators in Israel who have a lot of data and life history data on reptiles, for example, because there might be certain factors that relate with extinction rates that we can tease out. And then if you kind of essentially have a model where you've got some of the essential life history characteristics, but also what happens on the ground, say forest loss or accessibility to humans of the range, so anything that kind of relates to how far cities are away or roads or any of these things, and you can kind of quantify this in a model and then give you kind of sort of idea of where that species might lie. This might be a tool that can then help speed up these assessments. So that's another thing that we're currently hoping to work on. Lots of stuff happening.
Yeah. How do you think, how could you make these indicators more useful for decision makers?
I mean, I suppose in terms of the red list index, given the fact that there's not that many out there yet that decision makers can actually use. I mean, at the moment, you have the global one, which in terms of decision making, what do you do with it? It's very difficult. I think what would be good if you had it at a national level, because I think that's also the reason why we're kind of trying to push for national red lists. Yeah. It's because it's all very well to have these big messages at the global level, and that's also important, because we've got our global biodiversity goals, but ultimately action is a very local thing, or at least country level, technically even more refined than this. And so that's why we're trying to push to have countries do their own assessments. And where was I going with this? Ideally, I suppose what you would want is something that you can kind of spatially disaggregate somehow. Don't ask me quite how to do that right now, but ultimately something that has more information about where some of these things that you might pick up in your indicator are occurring. And that then again kind of shows how important it might be to have good spatial data for species, for example. But maybe also it's less the red list index and more other indicators that might tell you something spatial. That could also be, maybe there is more need for remotely sensing habitat change, these kind of things, coming up with good maps that show you where threats are occurring. Because I suppose if you then put the two bits of information together, it's like, these species are declining and that's the predominant threat, and then you have a map and you go like, oh look, that's where that threat happens, then you might be able to do something about it. And that might even be in the interim a much easier thing to do. When I say much easier, it's still difficult, because people have tried to produce threat maps and have failed miserably. That reminds me that I meant to look at another one that's a friend of mine was working on, and I haven't done that yet. Bad me. But I think you would need something that people can really figure out. I mean, if it's, for example, if it's relating to the species group and it's a general picture of most of the things are in decline, and the messaging is pretty straightforward, so you might want to do something to help, say, pollinators or bees in this instance, for example. But I think ultimately you need something that's much more spatially explicit to actually steer conservation action on the ground, because it's a very spatial process, I think. Yeah. I mean, obviously one part is to have species protection in place, and that doesn't necessarily have to be spatial. That can just be by putting that into your protected species list. So that's a possibility. And and it has been quite effective, I suppose, in certain ways. We recently did a study looking at what